I'm Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, GoPro's turnaround continues to take shape with a second quarter snapshot that beat across the board. We'll get the big picture on its rebound after a dismal 2016. Plus, SoftBank's spending spree continues with a $250 million splurge on cabbage. The online lender's CEO joins us to break down billionaire Masayoshi Son's big bet on his digital business platform. And my wide-ranging exclusive interview with Square Chair and CEO Jack Dorsey. It's been a banner year for the payments company. Dorsey's take on what's driving growth and high valuations in tech. But first, to our lead. Special counsel Robert Mueller has enlisted a grand jury in Washington to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 elections. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. The White House special counsel released a statement that says it's fully cooperating with Mueller. The move is being viewed as a sign that Mueller's inquiry is gaining steam. He's investigating Russia's efforts to influencing the 2016 presidential election and whether President Trump's campaign or associates colluded with the Kremlin as part of that effort. Joining us now to discuss from the White House, Bloomberg's Washington correspondent Tolu Oluronapa. So Tolu, what's your reaction to this? What does it mean?
Well, right now the White House is saying they still believe that President Trump himself is not under investigation, but this is a sign that this investigation has intensified and is reaching right into the White House, potentially into the Oval Office. There are reports this evening that this special counsel is looking specifically at the issue of the meeting between Donald Trump Jr. and a Russian lawyer last year in June. This is the meeting that also included President Trump's campaign manager and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. There have been evolving and changing descriptions of that meeting, who was involved and what happened, and it looks like the special counsel is going to be getting to the bottom of this with a grand jury that's been impaneled, and that will give them the opportunity to look at documents, subpoena documents, make interviews. This is something that could go on for several months to come.
The White House says they were unaware, the special counsel saying they were unaware that Mueller had enlisted this grand jury. What should we read into that?
Well, it's clear that this investigation is going on mostly behind closed doors. This is not something where the White House is being read in on every step, so they are going to have to react to a number of different developments as they happen. But it does appear that this investigation is intensifying, even as the White House is being forced to react to this grand jury being impaneled. It seems that the special counsel, Robert Mueller, is looking to do most of his work behind the scenes before he starts sending subpoenas, before he starts sending requests to interview various witnesses. So it seems like most of the work is being done behind the scenes, but it's clear that this work is definitely intensifying, and it could impact both the president and top members of his administration.
All right, Tolu, another story that we're watching. The Trump administration is gearing up to investigate China over its failure to crack down on intellectual property theft, according to a person familiar with the matter. Specifically, the administration is considering having the U.S. Trade Representative's Office start an investigation authorized by a rarely used section of the Trade Act of 1974. Tolu, how will this impact potential tariffs on foreign products and especially goods from China?
Well, President Trump, during his campaign, spoke out very harshly against China, saying that he believed that the Chinese were taking advantage of U.S. companies and stealing intellectual property. So this is an opportunity, if he goes forward with this, to potentially punish China for some of the actions that it's taken. It's something that we can expect over the next couple of days, that President Trump could take this significant action, and it could increase the amount of animosity between China and the U.S. It seemed like there was a short period where President Trump was trying to get along more closely with China, saying that China could be helpful on the North Korea nuclear threat. But now it appears that President Trump has abandoned that tactic and is now looking to get tougher on China and crack down on some of the trade practices. So we'll be watching very closely to see what exactly the president concludes as a result of this investigation, but it does appear that they're intensifying their investigation into China's trade practices.
All right, Bloomberg's Tolu Oluronapa live for us there at the White House. Tolu, thanks so much for weighing in. Meantime, GoPro reported its earnings for second quarter. The maker of wearable action cameras and drones kept its promise to Wall Street, with results beating analyst expectations. Shares soared, and after hours trading on the news, the company reported over $296 million in revenue. That is up 34% from a year earlier, surpassing analysts' average estimate of $269 million. The news proves that the cost cuts are stemming losses, and software updates are reinvigorating demand for the cameras. Joining us now to discuss from New York, Bloomberg Tech's Selena Wang, who covers GoPro for us. So, Selena, what changed? I mean, over the last year, GoPro shares have been in big decline.
GoPro investors finally have something to be excited about here. They were really struggling for the past 2 years, and 2016 was an especially terrible year. They had layoffs, job cuts, they had product delays and recalls, missed sales, slow demand, and now they're finally starting to turn around, reduce the bloating in the organization, and execute on the vision. Now, their losses narrowed 82% from a year before. That's enormous. But what's important here is that even though they cut all of these costs, they've been able to keep the exact same product lineup and actually increase sales this quarter.
What do we think is actually happening with the action camera market? I mean, there's been a concern that people are just using their iPhones. Why do they need to buy a GoPro? And that's where the market is heading.
It's undeniable that there are fewer and fewer reasons to buy a GoPro. As you said before, smartphone cameras are getting so simple. Action junkies don't necessarily need to strap a GoPro on their head. They can just hold out their iPhones. The camera and the lenses and the resolution has become so good. And that's why GoPro needs to prove out that there's still a reason why they should exist in the market. They've been focusing on making it an extension of the iPhone. I spoke with Nick Woodman just a few hours ago, and he doesn't want to call GoPro a camera company anymore. He wants to call it this lens that can be attached to the smartphone and capture stories in ways that your smartphone couldn't. And so key to executing on that strategy is making the camera super easy to use. So they just rolled out this software that automatically takes the video from the camera, puts it in the cell phone, and from there automatically edits so you can upload it really easily.
Quickly, Selena, tell us what's going on with the Karma drone. They've had some problems with it. It took a long time to get to market. How much optimism?
The Karma drone certainly has GoPro's brand presence. There's no denying that, but the reviews have been less than stellar. There are lots of competitors in this market, and the biggest one here is DJI. They are the leading global drone maker, and they recently released several drones that are in a similar price range or cheaper than GoPro's drone, but it has even more features and more advanced sensors. So I spoke to analysts who say emphatically that GoPro is not a winner in the drone market and that investors shouldn't be waiting on this category to be a significant driver of revenue in the near future.
All right, well, shares still spiking after hours, now up almost 13%. Selena Wang, who covers GoPro for us, thanks so much. Sticking now with earnings, Etsy shares popping in late trading after reporting revenue and earnings for the second quarter that beat average analyst estimates. It also increased its margins outlook for the rest of the year. And another earnings mover is Yelp. That stock soaring in late trading, up over 18%. Yelp reporting earnings that beat estimates and authorized a $200 million share buyback. It was also announced that Grubhub is buying Eat24 from Yelp for $288 million in cash. This in addition to the two companies agreed to a 5-year partnership that will see Yelp integrating Grubhub ordering into its own restaurant listings. Meantime, Grubhub is seeing its stock fall in late trading as it tightens its revenue guidance for 2017. Coming up, Deutsche Telekom has raised its profit forecast, but all eyes are on speculation that T-Mobile may seek a merger that would shake up the wireless industry. We will explore. Plus, later in the hour, my exclusive interview with Square CEO Jack Dorsey. Here's a little preview as Dorsey discusses growth opportunities for his company.
We realized recently that we're not really competing with financial institutions and banks and traditional lenders. Our average loan size is $6,000, so we're competing with people going to their friends and family and ask for a loan, and that's a massive market.
Sticking with earnings, German giant Deutsche Telekom gained in Frankfurt after second quarter profit beat analyst estimates, but all eyes are on its M&A strategy as it keeps quiet on plans for its prized T-Mobile US unit. Joining us now for more, Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde, who joins us now from London, so everybody wants to know whether consolidation is coming. We didn't get any clues, did we, Caroline?
We certainly didn't. The CFO was conducting the meeting today for the analyst call. Why? Because CEO Tim Höttges is actually out on holiday, Emily. This is how important the August time off is to the Europeans. The CEO isn't around for his earnings call, but the CFO did say, look, at the moment there are talks, but there's nothing to say. Instead, we got to pour through all the numbers instead, and they were good for Deutsche Telekom. Remember, this is a huge company. It's the biggest telecoms player in Europe. It's 74 billion euros in terms of market cap. And we saw it rise, revenue about 2%. We saw earnings up about 9%. But the reason is not Europe. It is the United States. In particular is T-Mobile US. They cited that as the strength of that particular unit, really the driving force behind these numbers. Check out FA Go. If you go into the Bloomberg on Deutsche Telekom and type in FA for financial analysis, all the way on the right-hand side of the screen, this recent quarter, we now have 47% of revenue coming from the US. That is more than is coming from Europe, far more than is coming from the likes of Germany, where we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown, particularly in their landline part of the deal. So clearly this is why so much is being speculated about what they do with T-Mobile US.
Caroline, if only we all lived in Europe and could take month-long August holidays. Let's talk about M&A, though. I'm curious. Sprint has said they've had positive discussions about a potential merger. What is the very latest that we know?
Well, this is the ongoing debate. We have been hearing from Tim Höttges, the CEO, prior to this about how he feels he's in the driving seat here. Even though we've heard leaks from Sprint, Masayoshi Son saying that they've had, as you say, positive negotiations so far. We've also heard from the likes, though, that they might potentially be looking at instead, maybe the competitor, maybe Charter Communications. Instead, Masayoshi Son flirting with that idea as well. So as yet, we don't know who could team with who. Tim Höttges of Deutsche Telekom has claimed that they will decide what, when and how. They say this is their kingmaker asset, Emily. But the reasoning is, of course, they could potentially do a deal with another mobile company. Strength, of course, in consolidation. They could be saving money if they got into bed with Sprint and indeed be a stronger competitor to the likes of AT&T and Verizon. But also, maybe we see a little bit of horizontal consolidation, not just vertical, because we might see maybe a cable deal done here. Maybe they want to get into content. Maybe we want to see even as much as Amazon teaming up with T-Mobile US. That's something that's been circulated by analysts. Notably, though, at the moment, analysts are also saying, look, they could actually still dispose of T-Mobile US in its entirety. That would free up so much cash to then start being a consolidator in Europe for Deutsche Telekom. But as yet, if you've got a CEO calling it his kingmaker asset, it looks as though he actually wants to keep hold of it and continue to grow as a launchpad into the United States.
And last quick question, Caroline. This isn't the only asset that Deutsche Telekom is looking to actively manage, correct?
Correct. Actually, it's been interesting. We've seen recently Deutsche Telekom set up a whole new unit, a whole new M&A unit for actively managing certain assets that they hold. In fact, they've been starting to sell off some. Scout24, that's a company, a portal for cars and for real estate in Germany. They sold that particular stake and cashed into the tune of more than 300 million euros. But Emily, you're also seeing a holding of 12% that they have in BT. That's the UK big telecoms company that they had to take a write-down, 400 million euro write-down on this particular quarter because they've had an Italian accounting scandal. But they hold a big stake there. They're looking to manage that. Also, they've got a Dutch unit that they potentially would be looking to do something with, and also a telecoms tower. They've got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, even an advertising company. It's now trying to just slim this down and really focus. The question is whether they focus in the US.
All right, Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde for us there in London. Caroline, thanks so much for that update. Coming up, we'll take a look at the future of artificial intelligence, where big-time investors are placing their bets next. Plus, later in the hour, my exclusive interview with Square CEO Jack Dorsey, where he discusses how political uncertainty is impacting his business.
I think the most important thing is to have an open conversation and to really speak up. And if we can't speak up, and if if we can't be open and transparent about how we feel about policy shifts, we're going to move backwards as a country and as a world.
Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba is continuing its fight against the online sale of fake products, this time teaming up with French luxury group Kering. Kering, the company that owns Gucci and Saint Laurent, has agreed to drop a 2015 lawsuit against Alibaba that said the Chinese online merchant was unwilling or unable to stop the sale of fake merchandise. The two companies will form a joint task force in the hopes of fighting fake goods both on and offline. Well, the AI wave is cresting, with both startups and tech giants wanting in on the action. One venture capital firm that's betting big on the space is Data Collective. The Silicon Valley-based firm backs entrepreneurs applying deep tech to transform giant industries with a focus on seed and Series A companies. Joining us now to discuss, Data Collective co-managing partner Zach Bogue. Zach, great to have you here on the show.
Hi, Emily.
So I want to start with big tech because obviously everyone has a dog in this fight. Facebook, Google, Apple, Amazon. Who's winning when it comes to big tech and AI?
In terms of consumer internet and consumer tech, the big companies kind of have a lock on it. For AI, you need massive data sets, and these guys have the consumer data and the AI to crunch it and to really make use of it. But the good news is that consumer internet, consumer products, those aren't the whole world, and that there's a whole rest of the world out there where is plenty of opportunity for startups applying AI in smart ways to start companies.
So let's talk about what's out there. You had a company, Nirvana Systems, that was bought by Intel, but you've mentioned that almost all potential AI opportunities have been scooped up. What's left in the wild?
So right now we're particularly excited about the life sciences industry as it relates to AI. So just now, some previously impossible, insoluble problems in life sciences are now addressable using artificial intelligence. And the way I think about it is, frankly, the $12.5 trillion life sciences industry fundamentally lacks core AI competency, which we think is a huge greenfield for venture investing.
So what are the opportunities? I mean, it all sounds very big picture. In life sciences, how do you see AI revolutionizing things?
So some of our companies, one of my companies called Atomwise, can build drugs and therapeutics and antifungals from the atom up. And they've done this for Ebola as well as for wheat rust, which is a fungus attacking agriculture. So that's a massive opportunity, and these are using hardcore applied machine learning, which is a subset of AI, to build these molecules and therapeutics from the ground up.
You're also investing in space and AI
Absolutely.
when it comes to space. How so?
So my portfolio company, Planet Labs, has 190 satellites in orbit right now that can take a snapshot of every square inch of the planet every day. That's a massive data set, and you need AI and applied machine learning to be able to make sense of that massive data set. The way I think about it is, most satellites can tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. Planet Labs can tell you what happened yesterday, but you need a sophisticated AI to interpret those results.
Do you see some of the big tech companies trying to hone in on these additional sort of uncharted territories?
Absolutely. I think that there's a massive opportunity anywhere that technology intersects the real world.
Mm-hmm. So you think they'll keep buying?
Keep buying
AI startups?
Absolutely. I think there's a...
So Elon Musk has talked for a while about this sort of doomsday scenario around AI, warning that artificial intelligence could become smarter than human intelligence. Mark Zuckerberg has said that's professionally irresponsible and that he is more optimistic about the future of AI. Where do you fall in that debate?
I feel like either of Elon's scenario, if it is possible, is a long ways off. Right now, we're talking about narrow-based AI, which is really AI being applied to a specific task. This is, crunching aerial imagery and figuring out what changed. This is not saying, hey, what's going on out in the world, and developing an intent and acting on it.
How do you think AI will significantly change sort of the tech monopolies as we know it? I mean, do you think this will be a key differentiator and who's in the lead in 10 years? It
already is a key differentiator, and that will continue to be the case. And the tech monopolies, or the big tech companies, do have a lock on that data, and their AI scientists are getting better, and their data sets are getting better, and it creates this virtuous cycle.
Does anyone have a bigger lock on it than the other?
I don't know. It's above my pay grade. I like to deal with startups. And I feel like there's, in terms of the life sciences industry, no one has a lock on it. And the startups are rapidly moving into that space.
So what industries do you think won't be transformed by AI?
I feel like anywhere where you actually need a person to interact, and I think that I see a massive amount of companies iterating to try to replace the real estate broker. But at the end of the day, you want a residential real estate broker. You want a residential real estate broker interacting you with face to face, holding your hand, getting you comfortable with this big investment that you're going to make. I think that's a long ways away, if ever, from being automated by AI.
So you won't be investing in any real estate AI companies soon?
Not residential brokerages.
So where are you looking at placing your next big bet?
Well, and the sort of the flip side of that, jobs that I think are going away and where we have several great bets is, first and second year investment banking analysts. I think we have a company that has a credible shot at starting to replace big blocks of that, as well as our company Merlon, which is automating the back office for big banks, compliance, increasingly anti-money laundering, and know your customer regulations are proliferating and are big burdens on the bank, and it's currently a pretty labor-intensive process, which should be done by artificial intelligence, which can be automated.
All right, Zach Bogue, Data Collective, great to have you here on the show. Thanks so much for stopping by. Coming up, my exclusive interview with Square CEO Jack Dorsey on Square's booming lending business, talking about banks, what role tech players should play in closing the gap with Washington.
I'm Mark Crumpton in New York. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with a check of first word news. The Wall Street Journal reports special counsel Robert Mueller has impaneled a grand jury in Washington to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 elections. It's a sign the probe is intensifying. Under its authority, prosecutors can subpoena documents and put witnesses under oath if there's evidence of a crime. White House press secretary put out a statement saying officials are fully cooperating with Mueller. Republican senators today introduced a border security bill to aid law enforcement at the U.S.-Mexico border.
This bill requires the Department of Homeland Security and law enforcement to consult with local officials at each step of the way, a point I just made. The folks who live in these communities know them best and must be part of any successful border security effort.
The bill also cracks down on so-called sanctuary cities. Today, Attorney General Jeff Sessions threatened to deny federal crime-fighting resources to 4 such municipalities. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro has denied allegations that official turnout figures for Sunday's election were manipulated. Maduro says Smartmatic, the international software firm behind the claim, is bowing to U.S. pressure. He also stands by the official count of 8 million votes. Smartmatic says numbers are off by at least 1 million votes. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe reshuffled his cabinet, putting well-known moderates in key roles. Abe has faced criticism for prioritizing conservative issues. Approval ratings for Japan's Liberal Democratic Party have also suffered following a series of scandals. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Mark Crumpton. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Thursday here in New York, 7:30 Friday morning in Sydney. My colleague Paul Allen has a look at the markets. Paul, good morning.
Good morning, Mark. Well, Nikkei futures are looking weaker to end the week as the market in Japan awaits Toyota's earnings, which will be reported after the bell. Here in Australia, ASX futures are looking very flat. We're waiting on earnings from Crown Resorts. We will see if there's any impact on the result after the jailing of those staff in China earlier this year. Also be watching the Commonwealth Bank after AUSTRAC, the government agency, brought more than 53,000 charges of money laundering against Australia's biggest bank, each charge carrying a possible maximum penalty of $18 million. A lot of data out of Australia today, retail sales and the Reserve Bank's statement of monetary policy, which is released every quarter, that could have some impact on the Aussie dollar. And in Singapore, watch out for DBS Bank reporting earnings there as well. I'm Paul Allen in Sydney. More from Bloomberg Technology next.
Turning now to Square. Shares were up 4% today with the payments company reporting strong second quarter results and boosting its annual guidance. The stock's gained more than 80% so far this year. After Square's earnings report, I sat down exclusively with CEO Jack Dorsey and asked what the biggest driver of growth is for the company today. Take a listen.
In our core business, I mean, that's what we're most proud of, is like we continue to build a business that scales. We're reaching more of our small businesses, more of our independent contractors. As I said on the call, we realized, recently that we're not really competing with financial institutions and banks and traditional lenders. Our average loan size is $6,000, so we're competing with people going to their friends and family and ask for a loan. And that's a massive market. We continue to innovate within that space, but it's just like it's got great fundamentals to it, and is something that continues to be attractive to all of our Square sellers.
Now, you're rolling out new product lines. You're trying to diversify revenue and offer this, as you say, all-in-one solution for businesses. Where do you see the most promising sources of new growth in the future?
I still see a lot in the core. We still have a lot of small merchants to reach. We still have a lot of room to grow up market. We recently introduced Square Point of Sale for retail. So we're getting more specialized and really paying attention to what retailers need in particular. This is something, we've always been more of a horizontal service. And we have been able to really specialize and go vertical, and by doing so, we get to open the funnel on who we get to reach. Let's
talk about the decision behind the physical card that you're now offering. Do you want to offer more actual bank services?
For over 8 years, we have taken on a partnership mindset with the banks. We're not out to compete with financial networks or to replace banks. But what we've been really good at is making what they currently offer today accessible to more people. And we started with sellers, and we took, an industry that would only enable 40% of people to get through to start accepting credit cards. We took that number to 99%. And we think there's a lot of room still to do that in seller spaces like Square Capital and loans, but also on the individual side as well. So, when you consider us, I would consider us as a simple, easy way for anyone to be able to start immediately and participate in the economy, whether that be on the seller side or an individual side. And what we're seeing with Square Cash is we are reaching an underserved, and we are reaching an underbanked, and it's a very young audience as well. So that makes us really proud, but it's consistent with what we've always been.
So you're attracting larger sellers. How do you handle the additional competition as you move up market?
It goes back to our core differentiators. I think, self-serve is a big one. So, building software that is intuitive and easy, no matter the scale, is really important. And then I think one of our greatest differentiators is really around being cohesive. We aren't just a point of sale. We are payments, and we are Square Capital, and we are CRM, and we're instant deposit. And it's all built into the same package. So you just download one app and you have everything you need to scale. So you can literally start as one location and scale to 40 without having to think about anything and without having to talk with anyone either. That's where we come in, and that's what we're serving.
You did report a net income loss. I'm curious how you think about profitability and how that impacts how far out you plan the product roadmap.
Something I'm really proud of is, we are a company that's moving money, so we've put a lot of controls over everything that we do, and we have a lot of discipline. And getting to profitability means that we've achieved a discipline milestone, and that we get to choose then how we invest or how we drive profits. We'll get to that milestone, and we'll continue to invest in building better and better services and better products.
One analyst from Loop Capital recently suggested that PayPal should buy Square, saying that their millennial Venmo customers would perfectly complement your SMBs. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of value in the fact that we are a platform that brings institutions together. We bring networks together, and we bring platforms and hardware together as well. So there's a real value in our independence, and that's what we're building against.
We'll have more of our exclusive conversation with Square CEO Jack Dorsey. Coming up, we'll hear what he had to say about the gap between Silicon Valley and President Trump. Plus, later, SoftBank has been investing in startups that focus on ride-hailing, robotics, and VR. Now the Japanese giant is expanding into online lending. We will bring you that story. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Now to more of my exclusive conversation with Square CEO Jack Dorsey. Square's stock has risen more than 80% so far this year. I asked what he thinks of sky-high tech valuations that we're seeing in the markets. Take a listen.
Well, I'm not an economist, so I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I think, we live in a market, and the market's decided to value it at this particular thing, and that'll always have ebb and flows. And it's not something we control. What we control is, do people want to use what we're building? And our job is to make sure that that answer is yes. And they want to use it so much that they can't help but talk about it with people that ask for recommendations about what tool should I use. I'm just starting a business, or I'm trying to get out of this nasty contract. Where should I go? And that's the thing we control, and that's the thing we focus on. So.
You must have a keen insight into the health of the U.S. and global consumer. Where do you see people spending and not spending? And what's your confidence?
We see people going to our sellers, and we see people purchasing, and those trends continue to be positive. And I think the great thing about Square's business is it's non-discretionary. So everything else can fade away, but you have to be able to make the sale. I feel really good about what we're seeing in the economy, and also how we will continue to thrive and support that.
There have been a number of reports about sexual harassment in the tech industry. People have lost their jobs. It's renewed concern about the lack of women in tech. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, it's something is in a situation that we absolutely have to provide a lot more attention to, and our focus has really always been on inclusion first, and making sure that we're building an organization, an environment, and a company that people feel like they belong, and people feel like they can contribute to, and they feel a part of. And you can say that, but we also need to make sure that it's not just an environment that people belong, but they can actually help contribute to decision making, and to really make sure that they continue to help. They help own our outcome.
The gap between Silicon Valley and President Trump still seems quite large. What role do tech companies play, and leaders like you, Jack Dorsey, in closing that gap?
I don't think there's any difference in the role tech companies play or individuals like me play. I think the most important thing is to have an open conversation and to really speak up. And if we can't speak up, and if we can't be open and transparent about how we feel about policy shifts, we're going to move backwards as a country and as a world. So that's my role, that's our company's role, that's our industry's role, but it's every citizen in this country's role as well. I'm certainly going to use my role and my experience to inform what I believe is right and what I believe is necessary.
As somebody who runs a company that moves a lot of money around, how concerned are you about not just economic, but political uncertainty right now? Well,
I mean, every entrepreneur and leader has to deal with uncertainty, and we just have to be comfortable with that. And the economic uncertainty that people talk about is not something I necessarily feel on a daily basis to affect my decision making. What I am concerned with is the economic disparity that we're seeing, not just in this country but around the world. And our goal as a company, and we'll have a very small part, but it's a part nonetheless, is to continue to provide tools for people to engage in the economy and participate in the economy. And we're going to do our best to do that. So that's what we're focused on trying to help fix. We're not going to do it alone, but we're going to have a loud voice as we do.
So last question, how does that impact where Square goes next? You've been expanding abroad. Where to next?
Well, we want to go everywhere. We want to be a tool and a service that's accessible to everyone in the world. We have a lot more friction in our industry because we have to work with banking partners and we have to work with regulators, and every local market has its own rules and regulations. So we're going to take our time because we want to do it right. We don't need to be first in market. We just need to be the best option out there.
My exclusive conversation there with Square CEO Jack Dorsey. Well, SoftBank has jolted the venture capital industry in recent months by investing billions of dollars in late-stage startups. Most are focused on technology like ride-hailing, robotics, virtual reality, and even a new farming method. The Japanese giant, though, continues its string of big startup bets by investing $250 million into the online lender Kabbage. Joining us now from Atlanta, Kabbage CEO Rob Frohrein. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. So let's start with SoftBank. How do those conversations start and proceed?
So thank you first for having me on the show. They started actually an affiliate of SoftBank had invested in a round of ours back in 2014. That was a totally separate affiliate, though, but I got to know folks there. So about 9 months ago, we started conversations again, and those conversations, they just accelerated.
What has SoftBank told you they're particularly interested in when it comes to your company?
So first of all, they're interested in companies that disrupt state industries, and also companies that can reach audiences and customers that are hard to reach traditionally. And so I think as it applies to Kabbage, what we're able to do is we're able to take any small business that's out there, have them land on our site, and literally within 6 or 7 minutes deliver capital. So from absolutely knowing nothing about them to knowing an incredible amount through the data that they share with us, and then funding them, allowing them to grow that business.
Now, I was just talking with Square CEO Jack Dorsey. They're moving into more of an underbanked market, reaching a new kind of customer. Are you competing with Square?
So I wouldn't say in reaching an underbanked customer. I mean, to the extent that small businesses haven't received capital to help them grow in years, that's something that we've addressed now for nearly 6 years in providing capital to small businesses. But what
Square has a lending business as well. Square Capital that does provide capital to small and medium businesses.
Sure, and absolutely. So to some extent, we're going to be providing capital to businesses that could take capital from Square and vice versa. But we operate really in an open market. So we operate with any small business, regardless of whether they're using a dedicated channel like Square or they're using some other payment system. The beauty of our system is in leveraging data that sits on an open network and really isn't confined, if you will, or walled gardened by a particular payment system.
Now, I asked the same question to Dorsey. How does economic and political uncertainty, especially when it comes to rates, what does that mean for you guys?
So, in terms of economic and political uncertainty, I think what he said was accurate, which is, as an entrepreneur, you learn to live with uncertainty. Look, every small business that we work with, some percentage of that audience that we serve every day is going through stress. These are not the businesses that are buying the fancy cars, the big mansions, and are going on fancy trips. These are small businesses that are your dry cleaners, your restaurants, the folks that are the lifeblood of the economy, and the key here is to be able to give them access to capital to help them grow and deal with uncertain times, which they always have.
So I know you're looking ahead. Talk to me about expansion and plans to go public.
Sure. So in terms of expansion, we're going to go much deeper with our small business customers, and so we're going to really start focusing on specific industries like those that I mentioned before and get deeper and richer information and be able to give that data back to them. We're also working with banks around the world. So we're launching in Australia, Spain, UK, Canada, Mexico, and we're going to be expanding that reach, delivering the same service we deliver in the U.S. under the Kabbage brand, but through our bank partners like Santander, Scotiabank, ING, and others that are in the that are right behind them.
All right, Kabbage CEO Rob Frohrein, fresh off a new investment from SoftBank. Thanks so much for joining us. Coming up, HBO hacked. The cable network says its emails are safe, though. We'll tell you more about what the hackers actually took. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. The hacker turned hero who stopped a devastating worldwide cyber attack in May has been arrested. Marcus Hutchins, who's credited with finding the kill switch for the WannaCry ransomware, was arrested in Las Vegas. He's facing charges that he created other malware to hack banking systems. In May, WannaCry software hit nearly 300,000 computers in nearly 150 countries. Among those hit were the UK's National Health Service, FedEx, and Nissan Motors. Now to a story we continue to watch, the latest on the HBO hack. The cable TV giant says that hackers didn't breach their email system. This according to an internal memo obtained by Bloomberg. However, a person familiar with the investigation says the hackers allegedly stole episodes of Larry David's Curb Your Enthusiasm and Ballers. Joining me now, Bloomberg's Jerry Smith, who's been covering this story. So, Jerry, what exactly do we know about what was taken and what wasn't?
Well, HBO hasn't commented publicly about specifically what was stolen in this hack. The FBI is investigating. HBO has said that they do not think at this point that their entire email system has been compromised. And if that's true, that's very good news because a lot of people when this news first broke immediately started thinking about the Sony hack from a few years ago, where hackers were able to compromise the email system and they leaked all sorts of embarrassing emails and communications with Sony executives on the internet.
Now, there have been reports that this hack is 7 times bigger than the Sony hack. I mean, do we know about the actual size and the impact?
It's still to be determined. One thing that is worth considering is that the Sony emails were. The Sony hack was largely emails, where it appears with the HBO hack, these are, in some cases, actual episodes of programs. We've reported that some episodes of Curb Your Enthusiasm and Ballers were stolen. And so the actual amount of data in that video might actually be much larger than emails, even if there was far more emails from the Sony hack that were compromised.
Now, there are other reports, Variety reporting that the hackers are threatening to release material over the weekend. What do we know?
Yeah, I saw that report as well, and it's, certainly something that HBO is probably taking very seriously at this point, that they're not commenting. But yeah, I think the big concern for HBO is trying to limit the damage here. From what we know, their big show is Game of Thrones, and as far as we can tell, there haven't been any kind of stolen episodes of upcoming episodes of Game of Thrones. So HBO is still investigating this with law enforcement, and certainly their hope is, especially with AT&T about to acquire their parent company Time Warner, HBO is really hoping that the damage here is as small as possible.
Look, obviously, so many companies have been vulnerable to hack attacks of late, but when it comes to media companies in particular, do they have a particular problem with security?
Yeah, it's certainly after the Sony hack a few years ago, Michael Linton, who was the CEO of Sony, he's gone on record publicly and said, you need to be very careful about your email. And, for an instance like this with HBO, it's not clear exactly how the hack took place. But, I've talked to security experts in the past, and they've said, look, there's 2 types of companies out there. There's ones that have been hacked, and there's ones that have been hacked and they just don't know it yet. So, computer security is a huge problem across corporate America, and media companies are struggling with this just like others.
All right, Jerry Smith, who covers media there for Bloomberg News, with us from New York. Thanks so much, Jerry, for stopping by. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. Reminder, we're live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.